Garden Basics with Farmer Fred is brought to you by Smart Pots, the original lightweight, long-lasting fabric plant container. It's made in the USA. Visit smartpots.com/Fred for more information and a special discount. That's smartpots.com/Fred. Welcome to the Garden Basics with Farmer Fred podcast. If you're just a beginning gardener or you want good gardening information, well, you've come to the right spot. Last September in episode 226, we presented 10 of the best quick tips for a successful garden. But you know something? There's plenty more where that came from. In this episode, we have 10 more garden quick tips that we'll talk about, including create a container garden that would be sure to slow down cars and wow those walkers going by your front yard. And we're only going to use 3 plants that you could do now in March or April. Is there a cheaper way to make seed starting mix? Brad Gates, he of Wild Boar Farms tomato fame, says yes, there is. Do you raise chickens? How do you store the eggs? Where do you store the eggs? What precautions should you take after bringing those eggs indoors? Good tips from urban chicken consultant and certified poultry inspector Cherie-Sintes Glover. Taking pictures of bugs you find in the garden can be a difficult task. Retired entomologist, master rosarian, and ace photographer Baldo Villegas has some easy-to-follow advice to help you create a shot of a bug that makes it easier to identify. Small apples are all the rage. They're perfect for putting in a lunchbox. But what's a good variety to grow? Tom Spellman of Dave Wilson Nursery has some ideas on that. Master gardener Pam Bone is in love with a certain peach tree variety, and you could be growing one too. Thinking you're going to chase away turkeys or deer or skunks or rats or ants or just about any other pest from your yard, house, or garden by using something like sound devices or shiny devices or an impulse sprinkler? Debbie Flower says, you better think again. The brown thumb mama, Pam Farley, works her magic on a strawberry plant by turning one strawberry plant into many. And it's easy. She'll explain how. Canadian garden writer Robert Pavlis shares his secrets for creating a successful garden by implementing the cut and drop method. He has the details. And finally, I'd like you to try to grow popcorn this spring and summer. I think you're going to like the results. I know you'll like the taste. I'll take you step by step through the process of growing your own popcorn. It's all in today's episode, number 258, 10 More Garden Tips. We're podcasting from Barking Dog Studios here in the beautiful Abutilon jungle in suburban Purgatory. It's the Garden Basics with Farmer Fred podcast, brought to you today by Smart Pots and Dave Wilson Nursery. Let's go. Leading off these 10 quick tips is something you could do right now during the early part of spring. Creating some curb appeal with widely available cool season flowering plants that will look especially great for 2 or more months. Nursery owner Julia Oldfield has some ideas for creating a 3-plant combination, a spiller, chiller, thriller floral display that'll slow down any passerby who decides to take a look. This was originally aired back in episode 47 in the Garden Basics podcast. If you want to add some pop to your garden, especially in USDA zones 7, 8, and 9, how about doing a little spiller, chiller, thriller display? Now, what is that all about? Well, Julia Oldfield has the answer. She owns Big Oak Nursery in Elk Grove, California. And Julia, what exactly is a spiller, chiller, thriller arrangement?
Well, I'm glad you asked, Farmer Fred, because it's a great time to add maybe a pot on your patio, or even a flower bed can be arranged this way. Filler is something that would hang over the side of the pot or trail along the ground. We like to use it's not new anymore, but it's something that not a lot of people know about. They call them cool wave pansies. If you know what a wave petunia is, they are these big giant petunias that will hang over the side of your pot. And they've developed a pansy that will also trail the same way, so it'll hang over the side of your pot. And then you have your chiller, which just sits in the center. Its primary job is to fill the pot up in the middle and just chill and sit there and be beautiful. We like to use ornamental kale. You have your purples and your pinks and your white. And then you can even add some calendulas, orange and yellow. Those are good fall colors. The orange calendula with the purple kale is absolutely stunning together. And then you'll have your thriller, which is the plant in the center that sticks out of the pot and just pretty much waves at your neighbors because it's so beautiful and so tall. We like to use the taller snapdragons. They will just bloom and bloom, and they come in all the different colors. So you can really get a mixture of colors or your favorite colors together. And it just really fills in your pot and makes your pot look full and just absolutely stunning. And you can do it in your flower bed too. You can have the lower pansy in the front and then a medium plant like a calendula. And then in the tall back, you have your snapdragons. And that way you can see the 3 layers. Someone's driving by, they can see all 3 layers because you have them arranged by height.
What a great display of color for the gray days ahead. A spiller, chiller, thriller of cool season plants. The cool wave pansy in the front, trailing over the pot or in the front of the garden. The chiller, the standout color that's, I won't say permanent, but it lasts a long time. The ornamental kale and the calendula. And then that big plant in the back or in the middle of the pot, the thriller, those snapdragons that can get 24 to 36 inches tall. Julia Oldfield, thanks for explaining Spiller, Chiller, Thriller for us.
You're welcome, Farmer Fred.
Many of us are in a tomato frame of mind right now. We can't wait to get started. Brad Gates, he's the owner of tomato seed company Wild Boar Farms, and he has some quick tips on planting as well as a less expensive alternative for a tomato seed starting mix. Originally aired in episode 79 of the Garden Basics podcast. Frankly, for the home gardener who's transplanting little tomato plants into slightly bigger containers, you could just use a good quality potting mix at your favorite nursery.
Yeah, I always use, that's when I'd use regular potting mix, that's what I would do. You can top off the trays, and if anything's bigger than, say, your pinky fingernail, pick it off the top. You can also run them through like a 1/4 inch screen, just regular high quality potting mix, just screen it at a 1/4 inch, and it makes perfect seed starting mix.
Excellent tip. And of course, as the tomatoes grow in that 3.5 inch pot, they can get kind of lanky too. But if you give them full sun, like what you have here in this greenhouse, they will tend to be fairly upright. But do you find you have to prune them?
No, if you give them plenty of light, and that's why I like the cool nighttime and the not too hot during the day in here, will make them a little bit stockier. Sometimes when you mass plant, like you're saying, put even up to 10 seeds or more in a small cup and plant them, they can fight for the light a little bit, so they can get lanky. The good things with tomato plants is you can always bury the plant in a bunch of the stem, and it will readjust itself, so to speak.
Yeah, just like if you bought a tomato plant at a nursery. If somebody bought one of yours at a nursery and decided to transplant it into the yard like they should, they would want to plant it deeper than where it was planted in the pot at the nursery.
Yeah, my general rule of thumb is plant about 20 to 30% of the plant, no matter how big it is. If it was a little seedling when I transplant, I'll plant them about 20 or 30% of the stem underneath the soil. Once I get a nice transplant that's ready for the garden, same thing. I'll trim off any leaves or suckers that are below where I'm going to plant, and then I'll bury about 20 or 30% of the stem. That keeps the potting mix it's planted in from drying out. That keeps, when the wind in the spring is blowing your plants around, it makes it a little further down in the soil so it can handle the wind, and it will also regenerate roots on the stem where it comes in contact with the moist soil.
Do you raise chickens? How do you store your chicken eggs? Are they on the counter or are they in the refrigerator? And should you wash those eggs first? Urban chicken consultant Cherie-Sintes Glover has some quick tips about that, along with how long you can expect eggs to last indoors. Originally aired in the Beyond the Garden Basics newsletter and podcast last June 24th. Here's a quick tip for you. We're talking with Cherie-Sintes Glover. She is an urban chicken consultant, runs the website chickensforeggs.com. And there's been some sort of interesting talk on the internet about eggs. Can you leave them out on your kitchen sink? Should you wash them first? Cherie, what's the deal with washing eggs and leaving them out of the refrigerator?
That's an excellent question, or I should say, Excellent question.
Thank you.
So you're very welcome. So there's always a debate, right? You have half of the people want to keep the eggs in the fridge at all times. The other half like to maybe, especially if it's their own backyard eggs, maybe leave them out on the counter. And the truth is it's a little bit of both, right? So what's super cool about chickens is that when they lay an egg, that egg is actually porous, but it has the chicken actually lays it with a film, right, that covers that egg and protects it. So it keeps it from bacteria from getting inside of that porous eggshell. And so if you do bring in eggs from your backyard, for instance, you have a laying flock and you're collecting your eggs for the day, you can absolutely bring them in. You can keep them out on your counter. It's not going to be a huge issue, especially because they, again, have that natural protective layer that's covering that eggshell. Now, most of us backyard chicken keepers will realize, though, that chicken eggs tend to get a little dirty sometimes, right? Especially in the nesting box. So you're going to be tempted to wash them. If you do wash them, that is totally okay and perfectly reasonable to do. But there's a couple of tricks. The first one is if you do wash that egg, you want to use a special, they actually have egg wash brushes that you can use that are gentle on the eggshell. But you want to use water that's actually warmer than the temperature of the egg. And the reason for that is it will keep from forcing bacteria in through that porous eggshell. And so make sure the water is warmer than the egg. The other thing you want to do is once you have washed those eggs, then you probably want to put them in your refrigerator. You've removed that protective coating, and now the refrigerator makes sense. When I bring eggs home from the grocery store, I know that they've been washed, they've been cleaned. I'm going to put those automatically in my refrigerator. And then the daytime temperatures, right? In the middle of the summer when it's so hot, I'm probably not going to leave my eggs out for too long if they are out on the counter. I'm going to probably put them in the refrigerator a little bit more quickly. But if it's in the middle of winter, I'm going to probably keep my chicken eggs out on the counter for a while.
For a while, a couple of weeks?
Oh, let's see. Well, it may be for a week or two, and they're usually just fine. But I tend not to keep my house too warm, so maybe that factors into it too. Really, if they're your own eggs, if you haven't washed them, they will definitely keep, or at least for a few days, if not a week or two. But if you wash them, then again, that's going to change that shell and remove that coating, and then you're going to want to refrigerate them.
And for refrigeration, what is the usual time that they're good in the refrigerator?
That's the amazing thing about eggs. So you can actually, keep them for at least several weeks, even a month or more. And there's a neat thing that you can do with the egg to kind of tell if it's maybe past its prime. So obviously, if you have fresh chicken eggs, you're going to want to eat them when they're fresh, right? When within that week that they're laid. But if you can't do that and they end up being 4 weeks old, oh my gosh, by all means, those make the best hard-boiled eggs. The older eggs always work better. Save those older eggs. But the trick that you want to do to maybe see how fresh they are is you would take a bowl of warm water, of course. Remember, we want the water to be warmer than the temperature of the egg. And then all you have to do is place that egg in that water bowl and then watch to see if it rises to the top, if it floats, or if it sinks to the bottom. If it rises to the top, then that means it's probably perfect for hard boiling. If it's still down towards the bottom of the water bowl, then you can probably use it for your fried eggs or scrambled eggs or anything like that. So that is the trick. But remember, the water needs to be warmer than the temperature of the egg.
So fresher eggs sink and older eggs float.
Yes, there we go. What a great way to say it.
Now I know a lot of people are asking the question, what is the temperature of an egg?
Oh, gosh. You're going to ask me that. That's going to be a hard question. Let's see. Let's see. It depends on the room temperature. So with an egg, you have to be careful because if it's fertile, this is kind of one of those weird kind of chicken geek kind of things. So a fertile egg will start developing at about 55 degrees or warmer. So if you do have fertile eggs and you don't want them to develop an embryo, you have to keep them below 55 degrees.
How does this happen without a rooster around?
Well, yeah, if you have a rooster.
Oh, okay, all right.
Then you're going to have to think about that.
Okay.
There you go.
All right.
Sorry.
You had me worried there.
But no, as far as they're magically fertile. No, well, so chickens will typically lay about 475 eggs in their lifetime, give or take maybe 10. And it depends on the breed. It depends on, other factors, because remember that chickens need to have so many hours of daylight in order to receive the chemical trigger to lay an egg. And that magic number is about 14. So when you hear that, people say, oh my gosh, my chickens are not laying in the winter, it's really not because the weather is colder. It's actually because the number of daylight hours has decreased. So it takes them longer to lay one egg, right? So if they're getting only 10 hours of daylight a day, it's going to take them in, 2 days to get that chemical trigger to lay an egg. So remember, they need 14 hours. What you'll find is that in the commercial facilities, for instance, or sometimes if you do want your hens to continue laying consistently through the colder or the less daylight hour months, what you can do is you can actually set up a light and give them that extra number of daylight hours, kind of trick them into it. So you'd want to have the light, though, not stay on at night, but actually come on early in the morning. So some people do actually add a light to the coop to keep them laying consistently. But that does mean that your chicken they'll be going through that 475 eggs that they're going to lay in their lifetime. They're going to go through that much more quickly, if that makes sense.
Yes, that does make sense. Is there a special kind of light bulb?
No, any type of light will work. And I just want to premise with, if you do opt to add a light to, some kind of light source to your coop, especially during the colder months, make sure that it's not a heat lamp. And the reason for that is because there's such high fire danger. Sometimes people will think, oh, okay, I'm going to go ahead and add a light source, but gosh, I might as well just get a heat lamp because it's going to be cold. Well, but there's so much danger when it comes to fire starting because of those heat lamps. Don't chance it. Just go with a regular light bulb, and the chickens won't need the extra heat anyways. They'll be fine.
There's a lot of chicken quick tips for you from Cherie-Sintes Glover of chickensforeggs.com. She's an urban chicken consultant, a certified poultry health inspector as well. Thanks for the quick tips, Cherie.
Hey, you're very welcome. Thank you so much, Fred.
We get a lot of garden questions coming in asking us about garden bugs. Primarily, what is it? What is this creature? Is it a good guy or a bad guy? Well, a lot of times a picture of the suspect is included in that text or email, and I'm here to tell you, we all wish those pictures were just a little bit better. Retired entomologist, master rosarian, and ace photographer Baldo Villegas has some quick tips for taking better pictures of garden insects. Originally aired in episode 200 of the Garden Basics podcast. We like to answer your garden questions here on the Garden Basics podcast. A lot of you like to send pictures of bugs that you can't recognize. As long as you tell me where you're from and maybe take better pictures, we'll get into that. I can help you out because I have contacts. I know people who know bugs, including this guy right here. If you're looking at your phone, you can see that it's Baldo Villegas, retired state entomologist, master rosarian, or you're above master rosarian now, aren't you, Baldo? You're like a emperor rosarian? What?
No, I'm still a master rosarian.
Okay.
I do a lot of identification of insects from all over the world for people.
Yeah.
And as long as they send me a picture, if it can be in focus, that'll be great.
Yeah.
If it can give you an idea of how big it is, that's also nice.
What is the easiest way to do that?
Put your finger right next to the bug. One of your fingers, and then that way I can get an idea of how big it is. Also tell me how common it is in your garden. I like to kind of get an idea if it's really a pest or not. Most of the insects that I see are not pests. They're innocent bystanders that just come to the roses or to the plants just to take a little drink of nectar or get a little bite of the pollen.
You know, speaking of taking a drink, Baldo likes to walk his acreage here carrying a mason jar full of alcohol.
Not full of alcohol.
Okay, half full of alcohol.
And it's rubbing alcohol.
All right. But this is a great way to get that picture of that bug is you capture it first, and then you can put that dime or your finger or whatever next to it so other people can get an idea of just how big the bug is.
Correct.
So tell me about your mason jar of rubbing alcohol.
I fill it just a little bit of alcohol, and then I go around in the mornings through my garden. I enjoy my garden every morning, and then I look for unusual stuff that might be flying by. Several years ago, I found a little tiny insect called a sawfly. It turned out to be a new pest for this area. And a lot of gardeners have a lot of problems with this sawfly. Common name is a rose slug. It's called rose slug. And it skeletonizes the surface of the leaves and is very common in our area from Orangevale all the way into the foothills and all the way into Oregon and Washington.
And entomologists get really excited when they find something new.
Yes, I first found it in this area in 2013, and since then it's become a major pest.
Baldo is famous for all the bugs that he's discovered in the Sacramento area. Now, we are in Baldo's acres, and being a master rosarian, the last time I heard, Baldo, you had over 1,000 roses. I think it's more than that.
I have 1,500 roses in the ground, and then over 1,000 potted plants.
But the beauty of being in a rose garden of that size here at the end of April and early May, it's all in bloom. It's just gorgeous here.
Yes, my garden is going to be in full bloom for the next 2 weeks. So I'm going to be enjoying my garden every day.
All right, let's talk more about taking pictures of bugs that you need to get identified. So like you say, it's important that people send as much information as possible when they send that picture of the bug, where they found the bug, maybe what season they found the bug in. Tell us about your garden, what you're growing, maybe the activity of that bug. Does it fly a lot, or is it just slowly crawling along? What is it doing? When you take a picture of a bug, and especially if you've captured it in alcohol and you can pose it, what items on a bug are you looking most at for a positive identification?
The best thing to do is get several of the insects, because you might be seeing the immature stages of the insects. So it's also very important to get the adults, because the adults are much easier to identify. The nymphs, or the immature stages of some of these insects, oftentimes are very difficult to identify by a lot of entomologists. But a few entomologists can do it. I know a lot of the immature insects for this area, but if somebody sends me a picture from Connecticut or Massachusetts and they show me a moth, I don't know when the heck that is. So what I do is I have friends who know friends. I send them to friends in that area, and they identify them for me, and then I get back to the person with the correct identification, and maybe if it's a pest or a beneficial or something that just passing by.
When you're looking at a bug, an adult bug, trying to identify it, are you looking at the number of legs, the antenna, or what?
All insects have 6 legs, antennae. The legs are in the thorax. Yes, those are, all insects will have that. But beetles will have, the hardened wings. The first pair of wings are kind of hardened, so you know that it's a beetle because of that. If you see a proboscis, so the mouth parts are in the form of a syringe, then that's a true bug, or aphids. Anything that sucks will have those proboscis, which suck the sap out of the plants. So you look for characteristics like that. Also, very important, you look at the wings. The wings are the most important thing in insects. In fact, all of the orders of insects usually have some kind of name in the wings. Like Coleoptera means hardened wings. That means first pair of wings. Neuroptera are the lace wings, and the wings are lacy. They call nerve wings. So you look for things like that.
So what is
Hemiptera?
What does hemiptera mean?
Well, hemiptera is for the true bugs, and hemi means half. Ptera means wings, so half wings. And that's when they fold the wings, the first pair of wings in there, they look like half wings. You always see a little triangle in there, where just above where they fold the wings, and that's called a scutellum. So you look for the half, for this kind of character.
You come for the roses, stay for the bug talk. It's Baldo Villegas, retired state entomologist, master rosarian. Thanks for the photo tips, Baldo.
Thank you. Anytime, Fred.
You've heard me talk about the benefits of Smart Pots, the original award-winning fabric container. Smart Pots are sold around the world and are proudly made 100% right here in the USA. Smart Pots is the oldest and still the best of all the fabric plant containers that you might find. Many of the imitators are selling cheaply made fabric pots that fall apart quickly. Not Smart Pots. There are satisfied Smart Pot owners who have been using the same Smart Pots for over a decade, actually approaching 20 years. When you choose Smart Pot fabric containers, you know you'll be having a superior growing experience with the best product on the market. And your plants will appreciate Smart Pots too. Because of the 1 million microscopic holes in Smart Pots, your soil will have better drainage and the roots will be healthier. They won't be going round and round on the outside of the soil ball like you see in so many plastic pots. The air pruning qualities of Smart Pots creates more branching of the roots, filling more of the usable soil in the Smart Pot. Smart Pots are available at independent garden centers and select Ace and True Value hardware stores nationwide. To find a store near you or to buy online, visit smartpots.com/Fred. And don't forget that /Fred part. On that page are details about how, for a limited time, you can get 10% off your Smart Pot order by using the coupon code FRED. Use it at checkout from the Smart Pot store. Visit smartpots.com/Fred for more information about the complete line of Smart Pots lightweight, colorful, award-winning fabric containers. And don't forget that special Farmer Fred 10% discount. Smart Pots, the original award-winning fabric planter. Go to smartpots.com/Fred. We have a quick tip on fruit trees from Tom Spellman of Dave Wilson Nursery. Back in episode 107 of the Garden Basics podcast, we chatted with Tom about the Hudson's Golden Gem apple. That's a rare high-chill apple that's really very, very tasty and is known for producing lots and lots of apples on the tree. Now, those apples are on the small side. But as Tom explains, there are some benefits to having small apples, especially if you have school-aged children.
We started in our fourth year of the project, we started thinning because we had so many clusters that were blooming and setting, 6, 8, 10 fruit in a cluster. So we started thinning all the fruit down to 2. But this is one that I actually went in a couple of years ago and thinned down to 1 because I couldn't get the fruit size up to quite where I wanted it. And that made a difference. But what really made the difference to me was the flavor. I mean, this was just an absolutely wonderful variety. And again, it's an old cider variety. It's a variety that you could use to make apple pies. It's a variety that you could just eat fresh. And when I start to think of big, big fruit has never really impressed me. Big fruit is something they can get more money for than small fruit. But when you look at where the market's going with things like that, if you look at cuties and Halo's mandarins and you start looking at some of the things that they're marketing in a smaller size, our cherry plums or the Plueri varieties are a good example of that. They're golf ball size or ping pong ball size, but they're just flavor packed and just absolutely delicious. So this, I think, would be a great variety and would store very well in not necessarily even in a refrigerator, but in a cool, dry, closet space or something like that. I think you could store it for several months through the winter. And what a great variety to put into kids' lunches. And I mean, if I would have had fruit like that when I was a kid, I don't think I would have ever eaten a Snickers bar.
That's Tom Spellman of Dave Wilson Nursery talking about the Hudson's Golden Gem apple. Tom is conducting trials in Southern California, growing several varieties of high-chill apples in a very low-chill area of Orange County. And he's finding that there are several varieties, including the Hudson's Golden Gem, that do well in a very, very mild climate. If you want more information about his trials and other picks for the Southwest, visit davewilson.com. So now you're thinking about getting that Hudson's Golden Gem apple. Well, here's another delectable piece of fruit that you might want to be growing in your backyard orchard, the Suncrest peach. Master Gardener Pam Bone told us all about it back in episode 183. We're We're with Pam Bone in her backyard here in Sacramento County. Pam Bone is a Sacramento County master gardener, and we're doing a little tour of her backyard, and she stopped at this peach tree and went into high gear about why she loves this peach tree. Pam, what is this peach tree?
This is Suncrest, and we were at the state fair, the California State Fair one year, and they were selling these peaches, and we bought one to eat, and it was phenomenal. I said, what is that peach? And it was Suncrest. So we said, okay, the next time we have a space open up in the landscape, we are putting it in. Well, we had another kind of peach here. It was a Babcock, and nobody liked it. So it was a beautiful tree, and it bore well, but we said, nope. We're taking it out, and we planted the Suncrest, and I don't regret it at all. It has the most delicious peaches. It bears beautifully. You can keep it nice and small, and yet look at this crop already developing. Beautiful tree. Wonderful.
Now, we should point out, too, it looks like you've been doing some thinning of the fruit. A little bit more to come, but basically you're looking for about the width of a fist between the remaining pieces of fruit in order for that fruit to develop a good size.
Yes, this is one thing that both of us get out here and do, and we've already done one pass through. We kind of wait to just make sure, just in case you get a little bit of drop, if something happens or whatever. But the most critical one is when the fruit is still as small as it is here. And that's going to give you the best size. So we're looking for that. And so, yes, I can see right here. Here's a double. I can just pinch it with my finger right now and take it off. And I think I'll do that while we're standing here. So I'll make sure.
Now, you've kept the tree at about 6 feet tall, and it's got about a 6-foot spread, too. So it makes a very nice-looking shrub that probably gives enough Suncrest peaches for you and everybody.
Actually, it produces so much fruit that I was actually able to freeze 2 quarts of peaches in addition to making a peach pie and eating fresh peaches on this tree. And this tree is only, I think, 5 years old now. It's truly amazing. It has just grown beautifully, bears beautifully, and the fruit is just delicious. And it's a good-sized fruit, but you do have to thin in order to get that as well, too. But you're right. We're kind of now at the stage where we've developed the main scaffolds. The secondaries have been developed. We've got our tertiaries, and now we're just maintaining the height and going to keep it as is.
There you go, the Suncrest peach. You may want to plant one. Pam Bone, thank you.
Thank you.
You have a small yard and you think you don't have the room for fruit trees? Well, maybe you better think again, because Dave Wilson Nursery wants to show you how to grow great-tasting fruits like peaches, apples, pluots, and nut trees. Plus, they have potted fruits such as blueberries, blackberries, raspberries, boysenberries, figs, grapes, hops, kiwi, olives, and pomegranates. These are all plants that you can grow in small areas. You can even grow many of them in containers on patios as well. It's called backyard orchard culture, and you can get step-by-step information via the Dave Wilson YouTube videos. So where do you find those? Well, just go to davewilson.com, click on the Home Garden tab at the top of the page. Also in that Home Garden tab, you're going to find a link to their fruit and nut harvest chart. You can be picking delicious, healthy fruits from your own yard from May to December here in USDA Zone 9. And something else you're going to find in that Home Garden tab. You're going to find the closest nursery to you that carries Dave Wilson's quality fruit trees, and they're in nurseries from coast to coast. So start the backyard orchard of your dreams at davewilson.com. You're listening to our second compilation here on the Garden Basics podcast of quick tips, nuggets of sound advice to be a better gardener. And this is a new quick tip from America's favorite retired college horticultural professor, Debbie Flower, on warding off pests inside and outside the home. Her advice? If you're expecting to dissuade the pest, be it an insect or a four-legged culprit, if you're using sound, lights, shiny items, or water, you better be warned. That won't last for very long. Here on the Garden Basics podcast, we like to give you a quick tip now and then, and today's tip is about pests. Four-legged pests, two-legged pests, indoor pests, outdoor pests, and the way they adapt to their surroundings. Debbie Flower is here, America's favorite retired college horticultural professor. And today, let's talk about, Debbie, habituation.
Okay.
I saw an ad, came across my email for a new miracle product to eliminate pests indoors, get rid of them quickly and naturally. Do you want to discover the best way to eliminate pests from your home? Take note, because below you'll discover how you can do it easily. Well, it's something you plug into a wall.
We plug a lot of things into walls these days.
We do. This looks like my Roku remote control. But this one only has one big button on it, and you plug it into the wall. And it says, if you're having trouble getting rid of insects or pests in your home or workplace, then this product is exactly what you need. It's a state-of-the-art ultrasonic pest repellent that uses ultrasonic waves to keep cockroaches, rodents, and other pests out of your home. Get rid of pests forever.
What a dream come true.
Yes, what a dream come true. But, it's not true. You look up any pests, from insects to birds to possum to deer, and you hear about all these devices that are available to control mice or geese or whatever. And it usually involves sound or water or lights.
Or
vibrations. And you know something? It will work at first.
Yes. Momentarily.
Yeah.
It's something new in the environment that they haven't figured out yet. So they stay away till they have some time to figure it out.
Well, I think they keep coming back and they hear it. And they turn around and run. They come back. They hear it.
Stick around a little longer, maybe.
Maybe back up a few feet and go, oh, what was that? And then the next time they go, oh, never mind. Let's just do it.
Right.
Yeah. That's the way nature works.
Right. And that's what habituation is. It becomes a habit for them to experience it, and it doesn't interfere with their life. They learn. So they just keep eating. It's
like motion sprinklers to keep whatever off your yard, geese or turkeys. These motion detectors are usually hooked up to a sprinkler, an impulse sprinkler. The water comes on. Well, the sound frightens them. The water at first frightens them. They go away. Before you know it, they're coming to your place for a shower.
Yes. Feels good now.
Yeah.
Nothing bad has happened. Right.
Habituation.
Yeah.
And I think in this case, this ultrasonic device works the same way. In that, it'll work temporarily, but the more they hear it, the more they'll get used to it. My concern, though, has to do with your pets. And what are they hearing? And for that matter, what is a human hearing? You may not be able to ascertain what you're hearing, but your head is.
Right. It may be having an effect on you that you don't even realize.
Right. It might be sending you, who knows, secret messages to send all your money to Albania or something.
And there have been official scientific studies done on these things with control and, full scientific experiments which show that they do not work, that there are some slight reactions by some species, but they've been tested on ants, cockroaches, mosquitoes, bedbugs, rats, and mice. The mice and birds. The mice were initially repelled, but then they became habituated to the sound. When they do get a response, like from the mice, it's only at a very specific ultrasonic wave. And this product you're talking about talked about rodents, which is mice and rats and other things that have to grind their teeth down, and cockroaches, which are a very different species of pest. So they obviously have not tuned this ultrasonic wave to any specific animal, but the scientific experiments still show that even if you get it tuned to the right wavelength, it doesn't work. They become habituated. There's a glimmer of hope for a few species, but it's not something that is commercially available or even completely worked out yet.
The closest that habituation can be thwarted, and I think we see that in the local vineyards, is come harvest time. The grapes are edible, but they still need a 2 or 3 week more in order to fully mature, making them ripe bird food in the meantime. So how do the growers keep the birds out of their ripening grapes? And they usually employ several devices in order to do it. They might start off in the first week with the sound of cannons or the sound of shotguns, going not at regular intervals, but at irregular intervals, so that the crows can't time it. Then they might try aluminum foil strips, colored foil strips, usually red foil strips, because they say the birds think it's fire. I don't know about that, but it does keep them off, but for a very short period of time. That those foil strips are effective for maybe a couple of weeks at the most. Mm-hmm. But that may just be enough time for you to get your crop in.
Right.
If you're growing grapes. Yes, they all work for a brief amount of time. Yeah.
But this is not, these plug-in products for the home are not going to solve your rodent problems or your insect problems.
Now, if it maybe put out a whiff of perfume or two to sweeten the air up in your home on a regular basis. Oh, wait a minute. That's a totally different product.
Right.
Yes.
Or calm your pet. I have those.
Okay. Yeah. If it played lullabies or white noise to help you sleep at night. Okay. Do it in combination with that.
Yep. But no, not by itself.
Nope. Sorry. Debbie Flower, thanks for the quick tip.
Yeah, you're welcome, Fred.
Back in episode 8 of the Garden Basics podcast, we had a discussion with Pam Farley, better known as the Brown Thumb Mama. She of the website brownthumbmama.com. And she was talking about all the vegetables that she recommends to get kids working out in the garden, growing food that they will enjoy eating. Then the subject of strawberries came up. And up popped some recommendations on turning one strawberry plant into many strawberry plants. How long do you keep a strawberry plant? Do you replant or do you save runners or mother plants, or how do you go about it?
The first year after I plant, I clip off the runners because the runners will tire out and weaken the mother plant, and all the moms that are listening to the podcast will understand that all the little ones will tire you out and weaken you. So I have not replanted any runners, but you can, right?
Oh, yeah.
Just as start them as a separate plant. Do you need to reroot them? Or
well, actually, they are already rooted, and you just don't yank them out of the ground, but dig.
You just clip them off.
Well, you actually, it would be better to clip off that runner and then dig it out and then transplant it to someplace else.
See, this is why I say I have a brown thumb. Because sometimes I do things and they don't work, and sometimes they do, and I'm always learning.
You're getting multiple years out of those mother plants then?
Yes, I'm on my third year.
As Pam Farley found out, you can get a few years out of a mother plant. A lot of commercial growers, though, will replant strawberries every year because with each successive year, those mother plants produce fewer and fewer strawberries. But one thing is true, those runners, don't toss them out. Clip them off, plant them, and you'll have more great strawberries in the future. There are even more good tips on propagating strawberry runners from the excellent book Plant Propagation, produced by the American Horticulture Society. Excellent book if you want to get into plant propagation more. And it talks about strawberry layering. Many strawberries, it says, have runners that root into the soil. Runner production coincides with the end of fruiting on cropping plants. Plantlets form on these stems as they grow. When the plantlets are well rooted, they may be easily severed from the parent plant. This self-layering habit can be encouraged. Stems may be layered onto the soil or into pots sunk into the bed. Now that's very intriguing. And this book goes on. For best results, keep some plants specifically for layering. Plant these 3 feet apart and remove the flowers. Keep the soil moist to encourage runners to develop and root. Peg the runners with wire staples into the soil or into 3-inch pots filled with a soil-based mix and plunge those pots level with the soil surface. Plant rooted plantlets into their final positions in late summer and autumn for a good crop the following season. Back in episode 124, we chatted with the science-based Canadian garden writer Robert Pavlis. He's the creator of the website gardenmyths.com. And he had a quick tip for feeding the soil for healthier plants, a task that didn't require much work at all. He calls it cut and drop. One of my favorite blogs to read is the Garden Myths blog at gardenmyths.com. The author is Robert Pavlis, a Canadian-based gardener. He is science-based. He has a lot of great advice. He explodes a lot of gardening myths. And in a recent post about using weed tea, or fertilizer tea, he brings up the point about how he basically feeds his garden, and it's with mulch, but it's a cut and drop method. What's that all about? Let's find out. Robert Pavlis is with us now. And Robert, tell us about your cut and drop method of feeding your plants.
Well, this started about 15 years ago. I moved to a larger garden. I've got 6 acres, and I learned very quickly if you walk around on 6 acres a lot, you don't get anything done, and you get very tired.
Yes.
So one of the jobs I've always done is compost it. I'd have the traditional 3-bin composting. I'd haul all the things I collect, the cuttings and the weeds and everything, haul it down there and turn it a couple times, make some compost and haul it back to the garden. And I realized that's a lot of work. So I had to come up with a better way. So I now use the cut and drop method. And what I do is when I'm in the garden, anytime I get plant material in my hand, so these could be dead flowers, I'm cutting things back, I pull a few weeds, whatever it is, I just drop it where it is. Now, if I know I have visitors coming, I usually kind of shove it behind a plant so it's not so obvious. But for the most part, I just drop it. And what happens is that in 2 or 3 days, the sun heats it up. The part dies, turns brown. A couple weeks later, you don't even see it. All those nutrients stay in the garden. They don't leave. I don't have to move them around. And I don't fertilize my gardens. There's no need to fertilize. So as long as you're not taking things out of the garden that have nutrients, you don't have to add nutrients back. Now, in my vegetable garden, that's a little different because there, of course, I harvest things. So I may fertilize a little bit. I put on a little nitrogen once in a while, but even there, I fertilize much less than most people. But in my ornamental beds, I leave everything where it is. I do most of my garden cleanup in the spring. We're starting to understand that garbage that's laying around the garden is critical for native insects to live. And so we leave it in the fall. And what I do is I come out in the spring, and if it's laying on the ground, I just leave it. Hosta leaves, they'll be laying on the ground. I don't have to clean those up. Nature does that for me. The flower stalks from a hosta, they're still standing up in spring here. Our winters aren't long enough, I guess, to knock them down. So I cut those up into sort of 6-inch pieces and just drop them around the hosta. So cleanup is very quick because I don't have to move things around. I just cut it all. And once everything is, on the ground, I'm done cleanup and I leave it there. And I agree that, very early on in the spring, before the plants start growing, you do see little bits of stuff here and there. But very quickly, those things grow. The tulips come up, the daffodils are up. You're looking at the flowers and you don't notice the rest. In a couple of weeks, it's all covered with new plant growth. And it all composts on its own. We don't have to put all that effort into it. Same with leaves. They drop off the trees, and for the most part, they stay where they are. I have a couple areas with big maples that get too many leaves, so those I rake half of them off and move them somewhere else where they can be used. I've stopped raking leaves out of beds. I go around the lawn and I rake those leaves into the bed that's closest, and I'm done. I don't want to spend time, playing around with leaves. And I find the system works really well. And if you go in nature, if you go into woodland, that's what happens. Everything drops to the ground and magic happens. The insects come out, the bacteria come out, the fungi come out, they digest it all. 6 months later, it's all gone and underground. And that happens automatically in my garden as well.
I noticed in the post for that on the cut and drop garden that you posted at gardenmyths.com that a lot of people were commenting that, well, yeah, sure, that's going to work for you because you get summer rain. Does this work in dry climates?
Yeah, well, what will happen is in fact, summer rain here in late July and August, we typically have very little rain. I can go 6 weeks without rain. So we're kind of a weird place here. We get lots of rain in spring and fall, but the summers can be very dry. But what happens is you have this leaf of something. It dries very quickly. It goes brown. Now, it may not decompose as quickly as in a compost pile because, a compost pile is hot. We keep it higher moisture level there. It's piled high, so it retains the heat and so on. So composting works faster, but this leaf will go brown get crumbly, it'll break up. Dew worms will come up and grab some and take it underground. And I can tell you in a few months, it's gone.
Robert Pavlis, good advice on easing your fertilization of your plants. It's a great way to have time to do other things in life. Garden Myths is the name of his book. You can find out more information about it at gardenmyths.com, plus his other writings. And he has a YouTube page as well. And that YouTube page, Robert, is
Garden Fundamentals.
Garden Fundamentals. Robert Pavlis, we learned a lot about easing our fertilization chores. Thanks so much for the quick tip.
No problem. Pleasure being here.
In today's Beyond the Garden Basics newsletter and podcast, we talk with Washington State University horticulture professor Linda Chalker-Scott about drainage issues. Linda has written extensively about garden myths in her books, as well as online at the Garden Professor's page on Facebook. And the myth in today's conversation on the podcast portion of the newsletter deals with drainage, especially the counterproductive practice of adding items to the bottom of a plant container to improve drainage. It doesn't. Now, if you don't believe me, if you don't believe Debbie Flower, maybe you'll believe what Linda Chalker-Scott has to say. In the newsletter portion of the Beyond the Garden Basics newsletter, we talk about improving drainage in slow-draining garden soil. And we write about drainage issues to solve when building a raised garden bed. Give it a listen before you decide to build a raised bed on top of your lawn. Plus, we have a nifty trick for thwarting gophers from attacking your raised beds. All that is in today's Beyond the Garden Basics newsletter. For current newsletter subscribers, look for the issue entitled, If You Can't Dig Down, Grow Up. If you're already a subscriber, it's probably in your email waiting for you now. And by the way, it is a free subscription, and you can start it or read it online for free. Find the link to the newsletter in today's show notes or sign up at the newsletter link at our homepage, gardenbasics.net. Here's one thing I'm doing this spring. I'm cutting down on the number of tomato and pepper plants I'll be planting because I want to use a lot more of my prime garden space for a crop that I seem to never have enough of, heirloom popcorn. I usually run out of this very healthy homegrown snack by December. So what is heirloom popcorn? Well, for one thing, it is far and away much tastier than that stuff labeled popcorn that they sell in bags next to the potato chips. And it has much more flavor than most hybrid varieties of unpopped popcorn. Plus, some heirloom popcorn varieties have the added benefit of having soft, crunchy-tasting leftover kernels, unlike those hard kernels at the bottom of a popcorn bowl that could crack a tooth. So how do you grow popcorn? Here it is from way back in episode 4 of the Garden Basics podcast. We've been speaking today about fun things to do with the kids, and that, of course, includes gardening and also growing kid-friendly crops. And here's one they're sure to enjoy. It's popcorn. Have you ever grown popcorn? Yeah, you ought to give it a try. And especially as interest in healthy eating continues to grow, this time of year, late April, May through early June, is the time for backyard gardeners to make room for that family favorite, and it's good for you, popcorn. It's a dent corn relative, and it's one of the best all-around snack foods you can munch on. It provides almost as much protein, iron, and calcium as beef. A cup of popped, unbuttered popcorn contains fewer calories than half a medium-sized grapefruit, about 40 calories. Popcorn is a whole grain, and that means it has as much fiber as bran flakes or whole wheat toast. And if you've never tasted homegrown popcorn, you are in for a treat. Unlike the drab sameness of store-bought hybrid popcorn, there are many different kinds available for the home gardener via catalogs, nurseries, and seed stores. But as we found out last week, listening to Renee Shepard of Renee's Garden Seed Company, seeds are getting hard to come by in this era of coronavirus. So if you're looking for popcorn seeds, you might want to start at your local big box store or local hardware store, then go to the nursery, and if that doesn't work, try online and see if they have any popcorn seed left. Some of the better outlets for heirloom popcorn seed include the Southern Exposure Seed Exchange, as well as Baker Creek heirloom seeds, and you'll find them occasionally as well at Burpee Seed Company, Park Seed Company, Johnny's, and Harris. Now, you're probably familiar with the traditional big and chewy movie-style yellow hybrid popcorn Well, you can choose among several smaller, crunchier white varieties, and that includes many heirlooms as well as hybrid varieties. And for fall decorations, it's hard to beat the colorful popcorns that include blue, red, and black kernels. Now, a word or two about heirloom versus hybrid popcorn. What do we mean by that? Well, hybrid varieties are bred to produce more cobs per stalk as well as larger cobs. And hybrid popcorns tend to pop up bigger as well. Well, that sounds really good, doesn't it? There is a downside. The seed you collect from your popcorn harvest from hybrid popcorn will not come back true to the original if you plant it again the following year. Heirloom popcorn tends to have the same problems as other heirloom vegetables. They're more susceptible to insect and disease problems. It's a smaller harvest and smaller kernels. But there is one big upside to growing heirloom popcorn, and that's better flavor. Plus, if you planted the heirloom popcorn away from other varieties of corn, the kernels you collect this year can be planted again the following year, the result being the same great flavor. Among my favorite heirloom popcorn seeds to grow include Wisconsin Black, Dakota Black, Cherokee Long Ear, but my favorite is Pennsylvania Butter Flavor Popcorn. The time to plant your popcorn, usually late May through June, anytime in there, and you would plant popcorn the same way you would plant sweet corn. By the way, don't ever plant sweet corn and popcorn together. You'll have two conflicted crops. You might break a tooth when chomping down on an ear of sweet corn, and the popcorn won't be popcorn. It won't pop up. So to repeat, you have to separate the distance that you plant sweet corn from popcorn by quite a distance. But if you're growing popcorn by itself, isolated, and none of your nearby neighbors are growing sweet corn, you should be okay. So what does a popcorn require to grow? Much of the same requirements as sweet corn. Full sun, a soil that drains easily, no standing water. And what you do is you plant the kernels about 2 inches deep, 6 inches apart. Now, for better pollination, don't plant them in a single row. Plant them in squares, in short blocks. They're wind-pollinated, and that aids the pollination. Thin out the seedlings when they come up to stand about 10 to 12 inches apart. When it comes to fertilizing popcorn, 3 fertilizations work best: at planting time, when the stalks are knee-high, and again when the tassels appear at the top of the stalks. Because popcorn can grow tall, 6 or 7 feet tall, it does use a lot of nitrogen to get growing. Perhaps choose a high nitrogen fertilizer where the nitrogen is about twice the amount of phosphorus and potassium. The numbers on the bag of fertilizer would say something like 10-5-5 or 8-4-4. No need to get the really super duper heavy stuff nitrogen fertilizers. Those ones in the single digit would just be fine. You want to irrigate the popcorn thoroughly once or twice a week. And then stand back and wait. Watch those stalks grow. Usually early fall is the time when you're going to be harvesting your popcorn. Here in California, it's early October. The stalks will be mostly brown, the husks will be dry, and the kernels will be hard. So wait for those stalks to turn completely brown before you start harvesting those cobs of popcorn. When will it be ready? Try popping a few kernels on the stove in a pan of hot oil at this stage. If most of them pop, that's your sign to remove the ears from the rest of the stalks in your garden. Strip the outer covering from the ears, the husks, and then place those cobs of corn with the kernels still intact in a mesh bag or an old nylon stocking to cure for 2 or 3 weeks in a warm, dry, ventilated area. After that period of time, pop a few kernels again. If they pop, then strip the kernels from the cobs and store the kernels in an airtight container in a cool, dry place. Now, if that popcorn you munch on is a little chewy, that means it's still too wet. Let the kernels dry some more. Popping a few every couple of days until the popcorn is no longer chewy is the way to go. Now, if you get too many unpopped kernels, add moisture to the storage container. Pour a tablespoon of water over that quart of popcorn kernels. Shake it up a couple of times on day 1. By day 3, try popping up another batch. Repeat this procedure until most of the kernels are popping. Probably the most difficult part about growing popcorn, and this is where the whole family can join in, is stripping the kernels from the cob. It's a little difficult. It's a little hard. Buy a cheap pair of gloves and wear those. Or you can buy this device that a lot of seed companies sell. It's called the Little Stripper. Okay, now that your imagination has run wild, let me tell you exactly what the little stripper is. It's actually a cone-shaped device that fits over the ear of popcorn. It has plastic or metal ribs on the inside, and you turn it as you go down the cob, and that strips off the kernels. Again, you can find this online. I think the Jung Seed Company may have some. And then again, storage is important. You want to store the kernels in an airtight container in a cool, dry place. And be sure to label it, date it as well. And you want to put the name of the variety on there because if your family really likes it, well, then you can set aside a small bag of those kernels to plant next year. If you want more information about growing popcorn, check out the Farmer Fred Rant blog page and look for the post called Grow Your Own Popcorn. From the garden email bag, Rahul from St. Louis, Missouri says, after listening to your episode with the author, I got Jessica Walliser's book, Plant Partners, but I would love to hear what you have to say about companion planting. Well, thanks for writing in, Rahul. I appreciate it. Companion planting, well, that can mean different things to different people, and not all of the suggested combinations have any support in scientific research, but they're certainly popular on the internet. In her book, The Informed Gardener Blooms Again, Linda Chalker Scott writes, traditional companion plant charts have entertainment but not scientific value. It would be better, says Chalker Scott, to not use the phrase companion plant. Instead, use phrases such as intercropping or plant associations, which are more definable and credible. By the way, one of the more credible garden writers on the subject is Jessica Walliser, as Rahul mentioned. And back in episode 78 of the Garden Basics podcast, we talked with Walliser, who is the author of the book Plant Partners. She talked about scientific, proven strategies for incorporating different plants into your vegetable garden to fend off the bad guys by attracting the garden good guys. Go ahead and check out our conversation about Plant Partners recorded back in 2020. It's in episode 78 of the Garden Basics with Farmer Fred podcast. Also, in that episode from our first season, we offer up a timely tip. How deep should you plant that new fruit tree? You can find a link to this flashback episode in today's show notes or wherever you get your podcasts or at our homepage, gardenbasics.net. The Garden Basics with Farmer Fred podcast comes out once a week on Fridays. Plus, the newsletter podcast that comes with the Beyond the Garden Basics newsletter continues, and that will also be released on Fridays. Both are free, and they're brought to you by Smart Pots and Dave Wilson Nursery. The Garden Basics podcast is available wherever podcasts are handed out, and that includes our homepage, gardenbasics.net. And that's where you can also sign up for the Beyond the Garden Basics newsletter and podcast. That's gardenbasics.net, or you can use the links in today's show notes. And thank you so much for listening.